to share with you how to make apple jelly. The apple jelly that I'm going to be making is actually reduced sugar, so I'm using a sugar alternative. I'm actually using monk fruit sugar, but you can use regular sugar or sugar cane in the same amounts and get a fully set jelly. Now the one key ingredient besides the apples is going to be our pectin. This is by Bernadine's. If you are looking for sugar-free pectin, make sure that it says no sugar required in order for it to set, because there are some light versions of pectin, but it still requires 3 cups of sugar and more. So if you're trying to avoid too much sugar in your jam, just make sure you get the pectin that doesn't require any sugar, and then you can add sugar to taste as little or as much as you like. So as I said, we're going to need apples, and in order to get a jelly, we need to render the juice of our fruit, as with any jelly that we're making. The apples are no different. In this case, I'm using a lot of Max and Ida Reds, and I'm using apples that are juicy and have a little bit of a sweet and sour flavor to it, because I think that makes for the best apple jelly. The other thing I'm going to do as well is leave the skin on, and this will impart a beautiful color, and your jelly will end up being pink. It's very, very nice. So we've got our apples, we have our pectin, we need our sugar or sugar alternative, and we're also going to need a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. And this is purely for taste. It's not really required in the recipe because the apples have a lot of natural pectin themselves, so they don't need a lot of help to set into an actual jelly. We're going to need some measuring cups, a spoon for measuring, some tongs, a juicer if you need it, a cutting board, your knife, magnetic wand, which is really very, very helpful in lifting your lids out of the water. So that's an extra tool that you may or may not want to consider using. We're going to need a large pot. Now in terms of our jars, this recipe will yield between 5 to 6 250 ml jars. So I've washed the jars in advance with hot soapy water. I've put them on a cookie sheet, and I have them in a preheated oven at 225 for 15 to 20 minutes. That will guarantee a sterilized jar. Now I leave them at that temperature throughout the whole time that I'm actually making the jelly, because part of not having to process your jars in water and creating the exact same seal is by making sure that everything is hot when it comes together, meaning your jelly is hot off the stove, it's going into a hot sterilized jar, and the lids are going to be sterilized as well, along with the equipment that we're using. So we also have a pot set aside with some water that we're going to bring the water up to a boil, but we're not going to put the lids in or our tools until we're actually ready to start making the jelly. So let's get the jars in the oven. So it's 225. Our jars are in the oven on a cookie sheet, and we're going to set the timer for 20 minutes, but that's really just to remind us when the jars are actually sterilized. So we're chopping 16 medium apples, and we're leaving the skin on because we want the color to come through, and it's just a lot easier, and you just want this in big chunks. You're going to be rendering the juice from the apples, so it's not crucial that the apples are any particular size or shape, etc. So now that I've got all my 16 apples chopped in pieces, I'm now going to transfer them into my stock pot. I've got a nice big stock pot. I'm going to drain these apples. So we've got our 16 apples all chopped up, and they can go right into the stock pot. So now that we've got our apples all chopped, to this we're going to add 5 cups of water. That's 5 cups of water. And now we're going to put this on the stove. We're going to bring it up to a boil, and then we're going to reduce it to medium boil, and we're going to let it cook with the lid on for 10 minutes. So let's do that. So it's been 10 minutes. I've just uncovered my fruit, and now we're just going to mash it down. So the fruit is crushed. It's actually making the juice pink, having the apple peels. And the fruit is very soft, so it's very easy to crush. And now we'll just put a lid on it, and we'll put the timer on for 5 minutes. So we've let the sauce sit for an additional 5 minutes. We're going to move all this fruit over into a sieve that is lined with cheesecloth. So we're going to allow this to strain. You can see it's over a bowl. Resist the temptation to press the fruit down. If you press the fruit too far through the sieve, you will get some sediment and your jelly will be cloudy. So if you want that the juice is not straining fast enough, then I suggest you can always raise the cheesecloth bag and let the pull of gravity just draw all the juice. You can also tie it up and then perhaps add something to weigh it down just to release some of the juice. But again, be careful that you don't push it down too much so that your liquid becomes cloudy. So our water is boiling. It's ready to accept our lids. We have our deep pot to make our jelly. We have our 4 cups of prepared juice, a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. We've got our Bernardine, pectin, ready to be used. We have 1 cup of monk fruit sugar, or you can use regular sugar cane. We also have some butter in case we experience any foaming in the jelly. We can add a pat of butter to that. We've got some tongs, our magnetic wand for lids, a spoon, and a couple of oven mitts. So we are ready to go and start making this recipe. So our jars are in the oven and they're staying hot at 225 degrees. And at this point, I am going to toss my lids in to the boiling water. And then I'm just going to leave the water on low. I'm also going to add my tongs that I'm going to be using. My spoon, it's all right. So now we've got all our utensils that are sterilizing, and they only really takes 5 minutes. And we are going to take our 4 cups of rendered juice, and look how beautiful and pink that is. And we're going to just pour our juice right into our pot. And I'm going to reserve this, I'm going to keep this measuring cup here because it's going to hold my smaller measuring cup that I'm actually going to use to ladle out the jam into the jars. Next, we're just going to add our lemon juice, and we are going to add our pectin all at once. And we're adding the pectin to the cold liquid. So we're going to stir it while it's cold until it's dissolved. We're going to turn our stove on high. We're going to turn it on high, and we're going to bring this to a boil, a hard boil. So any bits of that pectin that hasn't dissolved, it will start to dissolve as this heats up. It takes a couple of minutes to bring it up to a hard boil. Mixture is in a rolling boil. So at this point, we're going to take our 1 cup of sugar or sweetener, and we're going to put it all in at the same time. We're going to stir that until it's dissolved, and then we're going to bring it back up to a hard boil, and we're going to hard boil it for exactly 1 minute. We've got very few minutes to be prepared. Our jars are hot in the oven. we've got all our utensils, which are sterilized in our pot with hot water. So we've got everything here ready to go, our measuring cup, our spoons, our tongs. Everything is hot and everything is sterilized. Now the mixture is coming to a rolling boil and it's only been about a minute. So now we've brought it to a hard boil, and this is the time that we set our timer for 1 minute. And we're going to count down. Now if your mixture starts to bubble over the pot, then just give it a quick stir so that it doesn't overflow. So our timer is going off and it's been exactly 1 minute. We've got everything set up, ready to go. We can turn off our timer and we're going to turn off our stove. Now if you find that your mixture, and the foam goes away quite quickly, if you find that there's a lot of foam on top, you can add just a pat of butter, a little bit of butter, and just let that melt into your jelly, and it will reduce the foam. Now that we're ready to go, we've got our sterilized little measuring cup in our larger cup, and that's just going to save you from making a big mess in your kitchen. So everything is piping hot. We'll take 2 jars out at a time, so I find it's easier to pour while they're hot. We've got our sterilized measuring cup, and we can scoop out exactly the perfect measured amount, which is 250 mils for each jar. And I can already tell that it looks like we're going to get 5 jars of jelly, and you want to fill them up and just leave 1/4 of an inch of a rim. Take our lids, and everything is sterilized, and we're just going to just tighten these lightly, finger tight. If you have any little bits of jam or jelly that have touched the rim of the lid, you want to make sure that you use a clean paper towel to make sure that that is cleaned off. You don't want any of the juice coming in contact with the sterilized rim. So you want to keep everything clean. And we're going to set those to the side, and we've got 1 jar left over. Just fill it up. And the color is phenomenal. It's really, really fantastic. And then we're going to set them off to the side, and we're not going to touch them for 24 hours. We're going to be able to listen as these jars cool. You will hear popping, and that means that they are sealed. So if you're unsure whether or not your jelly is going to set, take a look at your measuring cup. So it's been about 5 minutes since I poured the solution into my jars, but as you can see, the jelly is starting to form right on my cup. So I know I'm going to get a perfect gel. So it's been 24 hours, and definitely this is the most exciting part of this recipe, is to see if your jelly actually did set. So it's been 24 hours. I left it in a spot undisturbed, and it has set perfectly just as I had expected. We did yield 5 jars, 250 ml jars, and the color of the jelly is very original because it's pink, and we're getting that color from the skins that we used in boiling down our apples to render the juice. So let's try the jelly. The consistency is really fantastic. You can see it's nice and firm, and putting it on our cracker, it actually spreads really nicely. So now is the moment of truth. I love it. I love the apple jelly because it actually tastes like apples. The sourness of the additional lemon juice that we put in there really complements the apples, the flavor of the apples perfectly. And I think that it just tastes fantastic. You're not eating a jelly that all you can taste is the sugar. You're tasting the fruit, which is what you want in a jelly. Now, don't be limited by using your apple jelly just on baked goods. You can glaze a ham with it. You can use it in sauces if you're making some specialty, perhaps an Asian dish. You can also use it to glaze other pastries like croissants, or you can use it to glaze fruit for a fruit flan. All you have to do is take a couple of tablespoons of your jelly, pop it in the microwave for 10 seconds, and it will become a liquid, at which point you can brush it on whatever it is that you are using. And as the jelly sets, it will then firm up and it'll just give you a beautiful glaze, turning your desserts from all right to absolutely fantastic. If you try this recipe and you like it, I hope you share it. Enjoy! It would be excellent ice cream too.